Welcome to Introductory Buddhism from the Tibetan perspective. Um, Introductory in some sense, but also hopefully of general accessibility for anyone that's a practitioner. So we've been doing a series of talks and discussions, principally centered around, from the Tibetan perspective, Buddhist basic philosophy and the kind of worldview and the different teachings that actually kind of make Buddhism Buddhism. So there's a lot of very important topics that we've covered already. And really what I've been doing is laying more or less the groundwork for meditative practice. In the world of Buddhism, and particularly in the world of Tibetan Buddhism, it's extremely important to have a kind of a contextual understanding that is the sort of the support for meditation. Now, we've covered some of this in previous videos, and tonight, actually, we want to get into more of the specifics and actually go through actual meditation together. But I want to start off by reiterating a few things, especially for those viewers who may not have seen any of the previous videos. So I want to start off by simply saying the obvious. This is Buddhist meditation, and there are numerous schools and approaches to meditation, some religious, some sort of, you could say, secular meditation practices. We always hear that meditation is a great way to lower one's blood pressure, get rid of one's migraine headaches, reduce stress. And of course, this is very true. However, that's not the goal, at least from the Buddhist perspective. We're after something a little, maybe we could say, loftier. We're actually really after enlightenment. So this is about as lofty as one gets. I don't want to sound presumptuous. We don't need to put the cart before the horse. And we don't have to get too high and mighty or distracted by lofty goals. That's not important. In fact, it's a distraction. However, in the context of meditation in our lives, I think we want to kind of stop and make sure that we have the right footing, the right foundation that we are going to do with our meditation practice. I often say meditation, and Buddhism in particular, is not a hobby. It can be, certainly. Some people probably do approach it somewhat like a hobby or something like that, kind of a curiosity. This is why I think it's important to stop and kind of get the mountaintop view of things first. Let's get the lay of the land. Let's kind of really understand what we're talking about here. So I've often said in the past, I'm a traditionalist, I should say. I did a traditional 3-year retreat. I've studied under some very great Tibetan masters. And to me, we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Just because we're 21st century modern Western people with sophisticated technology at our fingertips doesn't necessarily invalidate or mean that we can just kind of dispense with things. But many people may think, oh, Buddhism's a relic of the past. It's, after all, it's a couple thousand years old, and it belongs to a different time and culture. We can just dispense with all that mumbo jumbo stuff and I just want to meditate because I have these horrible migraine headaches and my blood pressure is high, and I have a lot of stress in my life. Well, of course, that's what Buddhism's about, is addressing suffering in all of its manifold forms. I think it's really important to stop for a moment, because we may have it too good. And what do I mean by that? Here we are, 21st century. We have every technological toy that we could want. We don't have to worry so much about suffering, so it would seem, because, hey, even if I have some disease and I'm in the hospital, I've got morphine, I've got drips, we've got great drugs. There's all kinds of ways to numb the pain and kind of cover things up. However, there's a deeper pain that we all experience, usually unacknowledged, which is insecurity, emotional stress, different kinds of, we could say insecurity, we could say we suffer from our egos getting bruised, we experience the loss of loved ones that we can do nothing about. We often have some inner sense that, worry that we might come down with some disease, on and on and on. And of course, this is what the Buddha was addressing. So again, I just want to say, I am teaching Buddhist meditation. So it is, for myself as a teacher and as a practitioner, it's impossible for me to divorce the two, the sort of philosophical underpinnings and then the practice of meditation itself. Hand in glove, they go together. Really, really important to say this. So I realize and understand that perhaps most of the people even watching this video are not Buddhist, not in a formal sense. You may resonate with Buddhist teachings and things you've heard and go, oh yeah, I connect with that. Or I hear many people say, if I chose a religion, it would probably be Buddhism, that kind of thing, because it doesn't fit your sort of ordinary modern kind of religious institutions and stuff. It is a little more respectful of one's sort of individuality and freedom, you could almost say. And so very important. So I want to say, I'm not trying to put people into a box, say you have to do this, you have to do that. But from my own sense of integrity as a teacher, and because of the background that I have, the teachings I've received, which I greatly respect, it is sort of my duty, my responsibility, I feel inwardly, to convey all that. So just to pass on meditation teachings, hey, you can get that anywhere. It's all over the place.
I read
and that's fine. But I want to be very clear that this is Buddhist meditation. So I don't want to beat this to death. So I'll pause for a moment. Tal, did you have a question?
I just wanted to add to that. I read a book on yoga when I was younger, and the author said in the book that yoga without the philosophy is just acrobatics.
Well, very, very true. So it's often said that meditation without the view, we use the term the view, meaning the view of how we sort of understand or see reality. They say meditating without the view is like a blind person on a great vast plain just trying to find his or her way. On the other hand, meditating or having the view without meditating is having all your provisions for the journey and having no legs. You're not going to get anywhere. We need both, it would appear. So, so that's what I wanted to say. So as I said, this is Buddhist meditation. I am going to take another couple minutes and just say, what does it mean to be Buddhist? Because everybody can say I'm Buddhist or I follow the Buddha or something like that, which is easy to get away with because who are we accountable to? Well, nobody really. So we talked about this in the previous video. So you can watch that video if you would like. I'd encourage you to, but I'll just briefly say the basic Buddhist teachings, the kind of big four, is that everything without exception, including ourselves, and even our mind stream and our thoughts, everything is impermanent. Everything is in a state of constant change and flux. Everything is interdependent. So everything is, as we say, impermanent, subject to change. We say everything gathered together eventually will disperse eventually. Anything built up eventually will fall down. Anything born, including ourselves, of course, will die. So the corollary is there's nothing eternal in a sense. This is why Buddhism is called non-theistic. Actually, we should say this, very important. It's non-theistic, meaning it does not posit a God. because God is thought of by mainstream religions as something eternal. Buddhism says, hey, wait a minute. I look and look and look, and I cannot find anything truly eternal. So we're not going to get into a philosophical debate here about the existence of God and so on. The Buddha actually said it's not even relevant. What's relevant is the fact that our situation is such that we have challenges, we have stresses and anxieties, we have difficulties, we have problems. And the purpose of, let's say, study and practice is to address those things. So let me go back. The first thing that really constitutes a Buddhist kind of worldview, you could say, is that everything is impermanent, subject to change, as we said. The second is that everything in this world of duality, everything that we perceive with our senses, everything that appears to be real and solid in this world outside of ourselves, because we attach to these things, because we imbue them with some kind of solidity, some real existence, they actually are we say, of the essence of suffering, which is a loaded word. I've said this before, but this notion of suffering, meaning unsatisfactoriness, meaning anything that we sort of try to pin our hopes on, attach to, will eventually perhaps disappoint us or slip through our fingers or will fall away. So that's very important. So the point of that is work on attachment, that kind of thing. So that's very important. That's the second. So we have impermanence and we have this notion of, to use an imperfect word, suffering, meaning life ain't all perfect and a bowl of cherries. We have challenges, and to be the sober reality of it is to acknowledge this. Because sometimes people want to say all is bliss, everything's perfect, and that kind of thing. That's fine to say those words. But when we really look deeply, maybe that's a little shaky. That's on shaky ground, you know? So we have to find these things out for ourselves. But anyway, Buddhist teachings in the classical sense, impermanence, this notion of, we say composite, or things that are put together or that seem to be brought into existence, are of the nature of challenges, suffering, difficulty. The third, which is a little more abstract, is that when we really look into the nature of things, phenomena, even the self, we can't find anything really there. We start to understand, if we study and sort of do our contemplative research, that nothing holds up to the scrutiny of our gaze. Everything kind of falls apart. This is a process of deconstructing apparent reality. Deconstructing apparent reality, not in an arbitrary way or an artificial way, but in a true sense of seeing things as they actually are. If we really look to find the self in something, it's slippery and elusive. It's not there. We have to find this out for ourselves, but this is sort of the essence of Buddhist philosophy. Sometimes we use the term emptiness, which is an imperfect translation from the Sanskrit, shunyata. And but this is, at some point, this is important. You know, for beginners, maybe less important. We don't have to worry ourselves too much about these kinds of things. There's plenty of time and room to investigate things further. But very important from a sort of a classical Buddhist perspective that we can acknowledge and sort of hold this truth to be self-evident, that all things are empty. Doesn't mean they don't exist, in a sense. It means in the way we conventionally view and understand things, they don't exist in that conventional way. And do they hold up to the scrutiny of our gaze? That's the question. And that's sort of segueing into meditation, because the scrutiny of our gaze is something we will get into with meditation practice. As we learn how to scrutinize, we learn how to investigate, we learn how to be mindful, we learn how to really look deeply. In Tibetan, this is called Latong practice, Latong meditation. It's the Tibetan translation of the Sanskrit word vipassana. And there's different forms of vipassana meditation. Insight meditation is taught in certain schools, particularly in America, that are very popular. They have a slightly different understanding or explanation or translation of vipassana. But the Tibetans use this term to talk about seeing with insight, seeing deeply the nature of things as they are. That's the third. So now let's go back. We've had everything's impermanent. Everything in the apparent world of duality is of the nature of unsatisfactoriness, suffering, as we say. Again, the third is this notion of emptiness, that there's nothing truly findable. There's nobody home. There's no there, as we could say. And then the fourth is that there is a state beyond duality, beyond sort of suffering. It's a state you might think of unified consciousness or oneness, but we talk about the realization of the true nature of things. And we call this, sometimes it's translated as enlightenment, or sometimes some schools use the word nirvana. But it's this notion that there is kind of a way out. There is a true wisdom that is beyond confusion. Those are the four things. So that is the Buddhist context. Okay. Let's just consider everything I've just said for the last 10 minutes to be introductory talking. So let's, we can get into the nitty gritty, you know, what people have probably come to this video for. This is actually about. So have that acknowledgement of those sort of four thoughts. If you embrace them, if you go, you know, those make sense to me. Yeah, I don't really find any fault with those. I can't really poke any serious holes in those four criteria. Then we could pretty much consider ourselves a Buddhist, or at least in alignment with Buddhist teachings and principles. It may even still be presumptuous to say I'm a Buddhist at that point, because there is sort of a gauntlet to run, or there's one final little sort of hurdle, at least in the formal sense. So again, as I've said before, I'm a traditionalist. I uphold things in this tradition. I feel like it's been good enough for 2,500 years. We don't have to start changing things because we think we're such sophisticated modern Americans. But there is a little acknowledgement of being a Buddhist, kind of a formal entry, which maybe we'll talk about in another video. And that's the process of, we say, taking refuge in the Buddha, refuge in the teachings, the Dharma, refuge in a community of enlightened or beings that have been on the path through the centuries and have actually attained to what we're aspiring to attain. So objects of sort of inspiration and deep respect. So we take refuge typically in the Tibetan tradition. This is a small, short, formal ceremony administered by a lama, and you're given a sort of a new Buddhist name and so on. And this thousands and thousands and thousands of Americans and European people and South Americans, people from all over the world, from traditionally non-Buddhist countries, have taken this refuge ceremony, and you can sort of say, oh, they're full-fledged Buddhists. So can we learn how to meditate in a Buddhist way without having taken refuge? Of course. That's what we're going to do tonight. I'm just saying, I'm very traditional. I tend to teach Buddhism, and Buddhist meditation. So this is a little bit of a new phenomenon, being on YouTube and reaching unknown people that may be everything from a complete skeptic to somebody that's really curious, and everybody in between. So this is a little bit of a departure, honestly, for me as a teacher. But It's okay, so be it. This is the modern world, and maybe it's a good thing. Last week in the previous video, I talked about meditation. I gave some general instructions. I talked about the objects of meditation, which can be a little statue of the Buddha. It can be a stone or a piece of wood. It can be a candle. It can be a flower. It can be something simple like any of those things. And that's totally legitimate. And then I further said that most sort of commonly, Buddhists tend to use the breath. We watch the breath, we follow the breath, we observe the breath. And there's a couple good reasons for this. As I said last week, the breath is emotionally neutral. It's not good or bad. It's not slightly good. It's not slightly bad. It's not very good. It's not very bad. It's just breath. It's completely neutral. It's not charged. When I say it's emotionally neutral, it's not emotionally charged in any way. And the other thing is, you can't breathe in the past. You can't breathe in the future. Every time you take a breath or an exhalation or an inhalation, it's now. It's always now. It's always now. And that's the point, isn't it? Meditation is a practice of being here now. It's being present. In fact, it's being fully present. It's being fully present. That's the point. We say, well, I'm always present. No, we're not. We're thinking about other things. We are distracted. And that distraction is a form of, we use the term confusion, because if you're distracted, your eye is not on the ball. What's the ball? The ball is reality. It's really just, you could say everything. We don't have to drill down and be too specific, but it means being present. It means being non-judgmental. It means not being full of any kind of expectations. It means not reminiscing and dwelling on things that happened in the past. And it means not anticipating and wondering or worrying or thinking about things to come from the future. So it's very simple, basic, not easy necessarily, but simple and basic. Big difference. So we have to practice being present. Seems almost silly. Why should we have to practice just being here? Because we don't know how, we're not used to it. Our default is to follow our thoughts wherever they lead us. And they lead us to other thoughts, and those thoughts lead to other thoughts. And it's a whole cascading story, right? It's an unfolding narrative that is constantly occurring. And I said this last week, the old bumper sticker that says, don't believe everything you think. So let's think about that for a moment. Don't believe everything you think. Normally, we just assume what we think is an accurate reflection of reality. So we are going to learn how to just use the breath to bring us back to earth. It's sort of our tether. It's our sobering tether. And this is what we do. So let's start. We sit upright, we sit straight. Typically, if you are able to, your legs are crossed. We have what's called the lotus posture, where the left leg goes on the right thigh and the right leg goes on the left thigh. If you can do that. Most Westerners have tight legs, can't really do that. So you can sit loosely cross-legged. The point is, and then put a little cushion under your butt to straighten your spine. Most important teaching of all, have a straight spine. And don't lean forward, don't lean back, but try to just sit upright. I say have a dignified posture. One teacher said head and shoulders, have a sense of head and shoulders. You're sitting up and you have a sense of quality that you're inviting into your life and that you yourself are manifesting. So it's an expression of our goodness, you know. Christianity, Judaism, the sort of Western religions, sometimes we say they talk about original sin. Buddhism talks about original goodness. ever-present goodness. Meditation is the best way to sort of express. It's an expression of our innate goodness, our innate already awakened state that's just covered up. So you can start with a prayer if you want. As a Buddhist, it tends to be done and sort of encouraged. But again, we're not trying to proselytize here, actually. We're not trying to force anybody or insist anybody do anything. We are independent Americans and free thinkers. So do what you want. But in the traditional sense, if you are interested and want to give it a try, and you are practicing, or at least attempting to learn how to practice in the traditional sense, we start with a prayer that says, I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dharma, I take refuge in the Sangha, from now until enlightenment is reached. And by the merit that I generate in my life, by all the good things that I do, generosity, being generous, and so on, may I wake up, may I achieve true enlightenment for the benefit of all beings, not just for myself. And there's translations of this, and you can just say it like that any way you want. But if you give rise in your heart to that feeling that I want to wake up, that's my point, my purpose for doing meditation. I really am taking time out of my day to do this practice for a specific purpose, which is to wake up so I can be of benefit and really help all beings in this confused, difficult universe that we all inhabit. So you say that prayer, and you really try to join the words with the actual meaning. And if you can give rise to a little bit of a feeling about this, that's the best thing. That's the best sort of way to launch into your meditation, so to speak. So we don't necessarily have to close our eyes. In Buddhism, the eyes tend to be, not always, but usually, very commonly, are left open and relaxed. Not trying to shut out the world. It's too easy to either fall asleep or go into la la land or entertain our sort of mental fantasy life. So keep the eyes open, we stay grounded, we're present. We're not trying to escape from the world. And we breathe normally. Now gently bring your attention to your breath, just the breathing. You'll see that your chest rises and falls. You'll experience and see that your abdomen is moving. There's a sensation of air coming in and out of your nostrils. Nothing's forced. It's very natural. Now we can be a little more specific. Really notice when you're exhaling. And again, it's just normal, natural. Don't force it. Don't try to change it. Notice when the air is coming in on the inhalation. Just notice it. Again, there's no story. There's no emotional content here. You're just observing. There's even a little pause between the in-breath and the out-breath. You can be aware of that as well. You can say we're riding the breath. We're staying with the breath. We're staying on the horse of breathing. Just stay with it. Gently. There's a happy medium between staying focused on it, keeping our observation on the breath, and yet not being too tight about it in our mind. Have a sense of relaxation and spaciousness. You don't have to even worry if you're doing this correctly or not. You sort of can't do it incorrectly, so don't worry. You don't even have to check in on yourself to see how you're doing and what's my state of mind and gee, does this feel blissful or not? You don't have to entertain those kinds of thoughts. If the thoughts are there, it's okay. Any thought that comes up, it's okay. But the point is, don't indulge the thoughts. When you realize that you have a thought that you're sort of fixating on, the practice is to learn how to drop that thought. Just let it go. Come right back to the breath, to this process of observing. You may notice there's a lot going on. You may notice the saliva in your mouth. You may notice a sensation in your legs or in your back. Again, you don't have to fixate or dwell on anything, except you can fixate and dwell on the breath. You don't have to be rigid. If you need to move a little bit, it's okay, just to get any stress out of your body. But keep your focus on your breath. And you don't have to fidget much or at all if you don't need to. It's good to be still. The idea is that your mind is relaxed, your body's relaxed, and your breathing is relaxed. Yeah, if you have a scratch, you scratch it. But again, then you just come right back to the breath. And it's very important to know you're not fighting your thoughts. We're not suppressing thinking. We're not trying to shut things off because you can't. There's no point. Don't even try. Just stay with the breath. When you're breathing in, you notice I'm breathing in. When you're breathing out, you just notice the breath is going out. Then it comes back in. Then it goes back out. Endlessly. Always in the present moment. If you breathe in a long breath, you notice that you're breathing in a long breath. If you're breathing in a short breath, you notice it's a short breath. When you're exhaling a long breath, you notice that you're exhaling a long breath. If you're exhaling a short breath, you notice you're exhaling a short breath. You just notice it. If the quality of it changes, you just notice it. You may have a thought that says, this is not challenging enough. This is not exotic enough. I want something more fancy. This is a waste of my time. Or I can't do this. My thoughts are just too intense. Just come back to the breath. Any thought, any story, any judgment, any opinion is, for the time being, unimportant. I'll share with you how I was taught. It's a slight variation on this. Keep doing what you're doing, please. There are 3 syllables in Tibetan Buddhism that are considered the most sort of seed syllables, we say. They're sort of, you could almost use the word sacred. They have special sort of significance. Om, and then Ah, and Hung. And they correspond with different things. We say body, speech, and mind, but it doesn't matter. I was taught that when you breathe out, you quietly say inwardly to yourself, and you sort of hear the sound Om as you're exhaling. Before the breath comes back in, just when there's that sort of pause in between, you can quietly say to yourself, Ah. And then when you're inhaling, Hung, which is H-U-N-G, Hung, or Hum, H-U-M, it's your preference. So we do this Om, Ah, Hung over and over. It's a kind of marries you to the breath a little more intimately. Om, Ah, Hum.